What's good, YouTube? It's your internet bestie, and today we are reacting to the 10 strangest Disney conspiracies. Let me just say, I hope this doesn't ruin my Disney childhood, but let's get into it, y'all.
A remarkable number of Disney conspiracy theories can be found online, some of which relate to the shows that he and his company created, while others discuss the man himself. Many of these myths have been debunked, but several others continue to baffle fans of the brand, and many more will likely come to light as time goes by. Number 10. Walt Disney needs no introduction, as his name is recognized all over the world. When he founded the Walt Disney Company in 1923, his vision for the company was to become one of the world's foremost providers of entertainment and information, which it is safe to say he accomplished. His love for cartoons started when he and his family were living in Kansas while he was still a young boy, correspondence cartooning course, and then went on to study at the Kansas City Art Institute and School of Design. And this is where he furthered his knowledge of drawing interesting characters. When the family relocated back to Chicago, he attended McKinley High School, where he started working for the school paper, taking photos, contributing drawings, and all the while still studying cartooning. He had his sights set on becoming a newspaper cartoonist, but he never got the chance to pursue that avenue as the First World War broke out and he was drafted. He served as an ambulance driver for the American Red Cross and would only make his way back to Kansas in 1919. Here, he worked in art studios and met animator Ub Iwerks, who would go on to create the famous Mickey Mouse character, and they decided to start working together. They created a small art studio and started making short advertisements for movie theaters. They also created a few sketches that combined live action with animation. But Disney eventually moved to Hollywood, where he and his brother Roy became partners for the remainder of Walt's life. Iwerks joined the brothers later on, and together they created the now famous Steamboat Willie cartoon that took the world by storm, as it was one of the first ever examples of a cartoon that also contained sound. From here, the Disney company only grew, and before long, Walt and his characters had become household names worldwide. He's considered to be one of the most famous people to ever live, and there's no doubt that his legacy will live on for a very long time. When someone mentions Disney's name, most of us instantly think of the cartoon characters that he created, such as Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and the Disney princesses that we're also familiar with. But Disney and his company are also often the subject of conspiracy theories, some of which are truly bizarre. One of the most outlandish theories that's ever been suggested is that he included a stipulation in his will that the first man to successfully fall pregnant and carry a baby to term would receive a portion of his estate. It isn't known where this strange rumor started, but we now know that there's no truth to it. Walt Disney's will is freely available for the public to view, so it was merely a matter of checking it to verify or debunk the theory. According to his will, Disney left 45% of his estate to his daughters and his wife, 45% to the Disney Foundation, and the other 10% was left to his sister, nieces, and nephews. And according to public records, this is how the estate was divided after his passing in 1966. Number 9. One of the Disney company's most famous cartoons is Peter Pan, a boy who lives in Neverland and who will never become an adult. He also visits children in the real world and sometimes allows them to travel back to Neverland with him, with the use of fairy dust. He hopes that once they see Neverland, they will also remain children forever. But living in this idyllic world isn't without peril. Peter and the other children who share his treehouse are always under threat from the pirate called Captain Hook, who commands his ship, the Jolly Roger.
Is it just me, or he looks different from what I remember him? I don't know, I could be buggy. Maybe I'm just going crazy.
Hook has one thing on his mind: vengeance. His sole purpose is to get even with Peter for cutting off his hand, which was then swallowed by a crocodile. Together, Peter and his companions, the Lost Boys, battle against Hook and his fellow pirates, with the aim of the show being to instill a sense of wonder in children and adults alike. This narrative is known to anyone familiar with Disney's work, but Pan and his friends are also often mentioned when conspiracy theories are discussed. One theory suggests that we've all been looking at Hook from the wrong perspective, and that he's actually the good guy in the tale. It's been suggested that Hook isn't actually after Peter for revenge, but that he's trying to stop him from kidnapping more children before bringing them to Neverland. But another theory had an even dark...
Wait a second. What? Am I like... What? Did y'all already know about this? Am I late with this? What?
Darker narrative. One Disney fan has suggested that the fairies in the story are actually mischievous pixies, and that they made a deal with Peter. In exchange for the immortality that he received, he had to lure the children to Neverland, where they would meet an untimely end. But a ship captain called James Hook found out about this arrangement and decided to try to put a stop to it. But realizing that he was outmatched, he decided to also gain immortality from a magical crocodile. But the price he had to pay for this gift was his hand. Furthermore, although Hook had gained immortality, he was warned by the crocodile that he would forever chase him in an attempt to end his immortality, and this is why we see the fear on Hook's face whenever he encounters the creature. When the deal was done, he started recruiting crew members for his ship, and when Peter realized what was going on, he decided to convince the other children in Neverland that Hook was actually a pirate, hellbent on ending Peter's life. Number 8. Disney World's Cinderella Castle is one of the most recognizable structures in the park, since it was designed to be tall enough to be seen by visitors from wherever they may be in the Magic Kingdom. It's also been the subject of a few theories, such as the Mandela Effect mystery, in which many people remember the castle being built in a completely different area in the park. They've even stated that they visited the park when they were still young, and distinctly remember it being elsewhere. This has been explained as a good example of collective false memory, where a large group of people erroneously share the same memory of an event, only to find out later that they were mistaken all along.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like the castle always been where it's been placed, because I think I remember going to Disney when I was younger, and it's still okay. I mean, like, it wasn't that long ago, but like, you know,
I've wondered what would happen to the castle in the event of extreme weather conditions, such as tornadoes or a hurricane. It's believed that this is where yet another conspiracy theory had its beginnings. The rumor only gained traction in 2017, when news broke that Hurricane Irma was heading in the park's direction, and staff started to make preparations for it to hit, or so the theory claims. Further confusing things was an article published in the British newspaper The Guardian. It reported that Disney World would be shutting its doors on the 10th of September 2017 in preparation for the hurricane. The article, which was published on the paper's website, also included a tweet that claimed that the spires of Cinderella's castle were being removed by park staff members to avoid as much damage as possible, and the tweet even contained a photo of this work being done. The post was shared far and wide, with some people adding that the conspiracy theory had finally been proven true, that the castle was indeed built with the option for the spires to be taken down in case of an emergency. AL.com reported on several theme parks and what they were doing to prepare for the hurricane, and included the tweet complete with this photo. Several other reputable news sites then ran the same story without checking the claim's validity. This caused quite a stir, as the Disney company has always denied the suggestion that the castle can be dismantled and moved, and with this article being published, they felt that they'd been lied to. Many people questioned why they wouldn't simply admit that the castle was built this way, since it shows ingenuity and amazing craftsmanship, so they started to believe that something more sinister was being kept from them. A representative from Disney addressed these rumors, stating that the castle was built to withstand hurricane-force winds, and that there would be no need to dismantle it for the approaching storm. They added that even the spires would remain intact for the duration of the hurricane, and any damage that was done by flying debris or the storm itself would be dealt with after the fact. The storm did eventually hit the park, and some damage was reported, but the castle stood firm as it was without the need for the spires or any parts to be removed. With a little investigating, the source of the tweet and the accompanying photo was soon revealed. It was found that the photo was taken a year earlier in February of 2016, when Christmas lights were being removed from the spire following the end of the festive season. As for the account that posted the tweet, it was found to belong to the WDW Kingdom Cast, a podcast that takes a cynical look at all things Disney. Even after the hurricane passed, the rumor stayed alive, and is still often discussed today. Number 7. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first ever feature-length animated film created by Disney.
Real?
It was first screened on the 21st of December, 1937, at Los Angeles' Carthy Circle Theater. And when it was released to the public, it took the animation world by storm. For the uninitiated, it follows a girl named Snow White, who's fleeing from the evil queen, and she decides to take refuge with 7 dwarves that work in a mine. But the queen manages to disguise herself and tricks Snow White into eating a poisoned apple, which causes her to fall into a deep sleep, from which she's slated to never awake. But when a charming prince finds out what happened, he tracks her down and magically awakens her with a kiss. The pair then get married and live out the rest of their days in happiness. This is the fairy tale that we're all familiar with, but some fans have come up with a theory that the end of the film doesn't tell the whole story. It all starts at the beginning of the movie when Snow White can be seen singing into a well. Her voice carries to the ears of Prince Charming, who decides to find out who it belongs to. To find Snow White, he climbs over a castle wall, but she gets startled and runs back into the castle, much to his dismay. This, the theory holds, is where things in the movie took a darker turn than we ever realized. While most of us believe she ran into the castle out of shyness or embarrassment, others believe she recognized the prince, who isn't a prince at all, but the personification of death. Since she was standing very close to the edge of the well, she attracted him, as he believed she might fall in and lose her life in the process. The prince persists, though, and Snow White sends a white dove out to him, which the theory suggests is symbolic of her soul leaving her body. We all know that after Snow White eats the poisoned apple, she's left in a coma-like state, but the title card in the film, when the dwarves are standing around her, reads, "So beautiful, even in death, that the dwarves could not find it in their hearts to bury her," which implies that she's passed on. She's then transferred to a coffin and placed in the woods where the dwarves mourn her passing, but then Prince Charming reappears and rouses her from her death-like sleep with a magical kiss. She decides to leave with the prince and says goodbye to her dwarf friends before getting on the prince's horse and riding away. All of these scenes are included in the theory, since they all seem to suggest that Snow White is no longer alive. The title...
So you're telling me that this prince is not real? No way.
Card states outright that she has passed. She's placed in a coffin, ready for burial. And if the prince really is actually death, he then comes to get her and take her away, never to return. Furthermore, they then stop on a hilltop where a castle appears in the sky, and this is suggested to be the Kingdom of Heaven, where Snow White is taken after her tragic passing. Number 6.
I think I'm gonna have to rewatch the movie because... What? Also, if any of you guys watch the live Snow White movie, let me know, because I wanted to watch it, but then I wasn't sure, because I seen a lot of reviews saying it wasn't so good. But let me know if y'all think it was good.
When it comes to conspiracy theories about domes, Disney is no stranger, as several of these theories have cropped up over the decades, at least one of which has been confirmed, although the project never saw the light of day. In October of 1966, Walt Disney appeared in a video to announce that the company was planning on constructing a residential area of between 50 and 75 acres called the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. The project was slated to cost around $100 million and would have housed as many as 20,000 residents. If the city was ever built, it would have included mass public transport systems, an underground traffic system, and a glass dome that would have covered the entire city. To ensure the residents were comfortable, the entire dome would have been air-conditioned, but the project was never started, since Walt Disney passed away just 2 months after the announcement was made. Instead, the Epcot Center was built to highlight culture, science, and innovation. What many people find strange about this is that many reputable news outlets reported on the city and its covering dome, but Disney never mentioned a dome, and none of the artwork showing the city ever included one. But it was later confirmed by famous actor Kurt Russell that he did indeed see drawings of the dome, as well as a model of the completed village, which was enclosed in a giant glass bubble. But this was only one of the domes that had been spoken about in Disney conspiracy theories. In 2023, Mousetrap News, a satirical Disney website, jokingly reported that construction of a missile defense system had started at Disney World in preparation for World War III. They added that the project would cost somewhere in the region of $500 million, and when completed, it would make Disney World one of the safest places in the world amid the war. Unfortunately, not everyone realized that this was a satirical piece and started spreading the rumor online. The same site published an article in 2024 reporting in jest that Disney World was constructing a massive $12 billion weather-controlling dome that would keep visitors of the park cool in the summer and warm in the winter. These articles were obviously not meant to be taken seriously, but many readers were taken in by and believed that these domes were really being built. Number 5. When the Disney film Lilo and Stitch was released in
Stitch! No, please don't tell me it's something bad, please.
2002, it became an instant hit. Kids could buy all.
And I don't care what nobody says. The live action was so stinking cute. I loved it. Like, y'all should go watch it. I cried. I did cry.
All kinds of merchandise like lunchboxes, action figures, plushies, posters, and even stationery. And it proved so popular that they made it into a TV series that ran for 2 seasons. The premise of the film is that Lilo, a Hawaiian girl, decides to adopt a puppy called Stitch from a local shelter, not knowing that the dog she chooses isn't actually a dog, but an alien experiment with massive destructive powers. When Stitch's extraterrestrial creatures receive word that he's been found, they do everything in their power to get him. In the end, Stitch becomes part of Lilo's family, and they're able to convince his creators that he should be left on Earth, since that's now where he belongs. This is the plot of the movie as we know it, but some fans have found a deeper meaning in some of the scenes after taking a closer look, specifically at Lilo's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Pelekai. A Reddit user named Kapukoa posted to the site with a theory that many people believe is very plausible. Kapukoa feels that the couple may be CIA agents, and that one of the characters, Cobra Bubbles, was a close friend of theirs, who not only also used to work for the agency, but also promised to look after Lilo and her younger sister, Nani. But this made-up theory, as Kapukoa managed to include some evidence that they found while rewatching the movie for the upteenth time. But they did make sure to mention that this theory is based solely on the first movie that was released, and not any of the 3 sequels that followed. The theory started to form in Kapukoa's mind when they rewatched the scene where the Galactic Council returns to Earth to collect Stitch, and their leader can be heard saying that she recognized Cobra Bubbles. He tries to explain how this is possible by admitting that he served in the CIA, and specifically at Roswell, which is famous for the alleged UFO crash that took place there in 1947. Kapukoa believes that any CIA agent with knowledge about what's going on at Roswell would never have been allowed to leave and become a guardian of 2 orphaned children. But since he made a promise to Mr. and Mrs. Pelekai, he was allowed to do so. It's also been suggested that this is why Cobra Bubbles doesn't immediately remove the children from their house, despite noticing that their living conditions are far from ideal. The theory that Mr. and Mrs. Pelekai were secret agents was further bolstered by another factor in the film. Kapukoa believes that Lilo is obsessed with taking photos of people with weight problems who are visiting Hawaii. They suggested that Mr. Pelekai was sent to the island by the CIA on a low-risk mission that allowed him to bring the 2 girls with him. To avoid suspicion, he uses Lilo as cover, since no one suspects a father and daughter who are just spending time outdoors taking photos of tourists in the area. Lilo remembers this time with her father, including the fact that his intended target was an overweight person, and after he passes away, she becomes obsessed with taking photos of overweight tourists, since it reminds her of him and helps her feel closer to him after his passing. The last piece of the puzzle in this theory became clear when Kapukoa took a closer look at the strange books that can be seen in Lilo's bedroom. Their titles include Roadmaps of Iowa, Oyster Farming, Is It For You?, Practical Voodoo, and Fire Eating for Fun and Profit. Most young people wouldn't have these kinds of books in their rooms, and so Kapukoa suggests that they actually belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Pelekai, who, as CIA agents, had to do a lot of research into the targets that they were tasked with finding. Sometimes these targets had some very interesting and unusual hobbies, which is why they needed to buy these strange books. After they lose their lives in a car accident, which happens before the events in the film, Lilo inherits the books and keeps them in her room to feel closer to her parents. Other users enjoyed this theory and even suggested that instead of the sequels that were later released, Disney should have continued the tale, with Lilo becoming a CIA agent as well, with Stitch at her side as her sidekick. Number 4. In the Disney film Toy Story 2, which was released in November of 1999, one of the more beloved characters is a toy penguin called Wheezy. But Wheezy is defective since he has a broken squeaking mechanism, and hence he's been sitting on Andy, his owner's shelf, for a long time. As a result, Andy's mother decided that it would be best if Wheezy was sold at a yard sale that would be held at the family's home. But before he could be sold, Woody, another of the main toy characters, decides to save him. But yet another Reddit user, the Circle of Knife, has suggested that Wheezy isn't as adorable a character as we thought. They constructed a conspiracy theory after having a strange dream about the movie and waking up to the realization that something about the penguin didn't feel quite right. Since Wheezy wasn't in the first Toy Story movie, it's safe to assume that Andy only had him for a few months before his squeaker broke and he was abandoned on the shelf. They then go on to state that it's obvious that the penguin was one of Andy's favorite toys that he played with very often, but when he broke, Andy forgot about him. Since we learned in the first film that the toys can sometimes become jealous of one another, the Circle of Knife assumed that Wheezy started growing ever more jealous of the other toys in Andy's room, since he had to sit on the shelf for months, watching them being played with, while he merely gathered dust. By the time that the yard sale arrives, Wheezy has become depressed over his situation, which, according to the Circle of Knife, is evident when Woody decides to save him, and he can be heard saying, "What's the point in prolonging the inevitable? We're all just one stitch away from here to there." By which he means from Andy's room to the yard sale. The Circle of Knife feels that at this point, the penguin no longer cares about whether he gets sold or not, since he doesn't attempt to hide when Andy's mother enters the room, looking for toys to sell at the yard sale. But Woody ends up hiding him by pushing him in between some nearby books, and Andy's mother never notices. The theory further states that Wheezy may have intended for Woody to save him all along, not so that he could play with Andy, but so that Andy's mom would notice Woody and sell him instead. His plan doesn't go as planned, but he ends up getting rid of Woody anyway, at least for a while, since he's kidnapped by one of the movie's villains, Al. Eventually, Woody makes it back to Andy's room, where he's reunited with the other toys, and Wheezy is found by Andy. He's then fitted with a new squeaker, which puts him in a much better mood, and makes friends with the other toys that he was jealous of before.
Really the villain?
At the end of the movie, he can be heard singing the song "You've Got a Friend in Me," which the Circle of Knife suggests is either because he feels guilty for throwing Woody under the bus, or that the song is a distraction away from the heinous plan that he hatched. Number 3. Not many people know that the Disney film Aladdin is an adaptation from an 18th century folktale that was included in an Arabic language collection called 1001 Nights, making the tale much older than most people assume. The story was retold by Disney in 1992 in an animated film that became that year's highest-grossing movie, as it raked in as much as $346 million around the world after its release in cinemas.
I'm actually going to have to rewatch Aladdin. I don't really remember much of it.
The original telling of the tale features Aladdin not as Arabian, but as Chinese, and when the film is released, this change drew the ire of many groups around the world. They felt that it was an insensitive alteration, despite the fact that Agrabah, the city in which the film is set, is completely fictional. Whatever the case may be, it remains one of Disney's most memorable films, despite the story having been told many times over in the past. One of the main drawing points of the film is the blue genie that was voiced by Robin Williams, thanks to his chaotic and hilarious nature. The narrative holds that Aladdin is a poor young man who lives on the city streets and mostly survives by stealing food from vendors who would like nothing more than to see him caught. He's eventually forced to flee from the story's antagonist, Jafar, and he ends up wandering through the desert where he finds a mysterious lamp. When he rubs the lamp, he meets the genie for the first time, and soon they become friends. But the film is also the subject of an alternate theory that has to do with the time in which it's set. The clothes that are worn by the characters in the film, as well as the architecture in the city, give the setting the feeling of being in the distant past. But some fans think the opposite is true, and the story plays out in the future instead. First, at the beginning of the movie, viewers are asked by a merchant whether they would like to purchase a rare piece of Tupperware. Since this product could not have existed so long ago, they suggest that the Tupperware is actually an antique relic that is highly sought after in the distant future. In another scene, where the genie is singing the song "Friend Like Me," neon lights are visible, and he wears a modern tuxedo with a top hat, which would not have been possible unless the film is set in the distant future. From here, the evidence only mounts further. At one point, the genie makes fun of Aladdin, saying that his clothes look like they're from the 3rd century, which would at first make the viewers think that they're living close to that time. But considering the genie has been trapped in the lamp for 10,000 years, he would have had to have been imprisoned only after the 3rd century, since he recognizes the fashion style, and hence is released at least 10,000 years after that. Furthermore, the genie makes reference to 20th century pop icons, such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jack Nicholson, and Rodney Dangerfield, which would put his entrapment and the movie's setting even further into the future. It's also been suggested that the flying carpet that Aladdin uses is actually some kind of hoverboard technology that was hidden away in the Cave of Wonders when a nuclear war broke out that left the planet as nothing more than a vast desert. While this theory is a tongue-in-cheek suggestion, many fans find it fun to think about, but still believe that the narrative is likely set in the past. Number 2. Many fan theories suggest that films and shows, not only those created by Disney, take place in the same universe. Some good examples of this are Danny Phantom and the Fairly OddParents, Samurai Jack and the Powerpuff Girls, and Tarzan and Frozen. The theories connecting these universes have been thoroughly scrutinized, and while some agree with them, some fans think they're a little too outlandish to consider as true. When it comes to Disney films, one theory suggests that The Little Mermaid and Peter Pan take place in the same universe, and a few fans claim to have found proof. To the untrained eye, these two films have very little in common, since one centers around a boy who never grows old, while the other is about a mermaid who falls in love with a human and wishes to live on land rather than under the sea. The mermaid Ariel is known to be the daughter of King Triton and Queen Athena, but the queen never makes an appearance in the movie, which has led to a lot of speculation among fans over the years. In the 3rd film in the franchise, we learn that Queen Athena met a tragic end while Ariel was still young. She and the king are celebrating their wedding anniversary inside of a cove, and he gifts her with a music box that plays their favorite song. But in the midst of the celebrations, a pirate ship suddenly arrives, prompting everyone in attendance to flee. But the queen drops the music box while fleeing and decides to go back for it, causing her to fall behind the rest of the group. In the meantime, the ship has sailed out of control and unfortunately ends up crushing the queen on the rocks and ending her life. The result is that the king ends up hating music and humans, as they only serve as a reminder of his loss and sadness. According to the theory, the answer as to who was captaining the ship can be found in the 1953 Peter Pan movie. At one point, Peter takes Wendy to Mermaid Lagoon, where mermaids can be seen frolicking in the water. The pair spend some time with the mermaids, who are obviously fond of Peter, but then Captain Hook and his ship arrive, sending the mermaids into a frenzy as they attempt to flee. This suggests that they know him to be a villain and that they've encountered him in the past. From here, the parallels almost draw themselves.
It's just a coincidence.
The theory suggests that the mermaids are afraid of Hook and his ship, since he was the one responsible for ending Queen Athena's life. Since they've come to understand his nature, they know that he would have no qualms about ending another mermaid's life, and hence they scramble to get out of the way of the ship and Hook's view. Many Disney fans have adopted this theory as fact, even though it's never been confirmed by either of the movie's creators. They believe that Disney films often contain small clues that paint a completely different story to the one that's being presented at face value, and hence they think that Peter Pan and Ariel could indeed exist in the same universe. Number 1. Pixar Animation Studios is owned by the Walt Disney Company, and hence it comes as no surprise that some fans look for ways to connect films that are made by these two individual studios. Pixar has been at the forefront of animation for many years, and whenever they announce a new release, fans usually wait with bated breath until they're able to watch it in cinemas, thanks to the high quality of the animation and the studio's good track record when it comes to humor. But some fans also try to find hidden Easter eggs in these films, some of which have led to some wild and outlandish conspiracy theories, such as the suggestion that Monsters, Inc. and Brave, two very different movies, are connected in a very unexpected way. In fact, some Pixar fans believe that all the films created by the studio are set in the same universe, and that some of them even take place at the same time, only in different parts of that universe. Monsters, Inc. is one of Pixar's most beloved films, as it deals with children who have nightmares and the monsters that they see under their beds, in their closets, and in the shadowy corners of their bedrooms. One of these children is a girl called Boo, who accidentally becomes the first human to set foot in Monstropolis, a city where the monsters process the screams of the children they frightened, and where they're then used to power the city.
That was one of definitely.
She becomes friends with the film's main characters, Sully and Mike, who try to return her to her own world, amid a series of chaotic and hilarious events that keep viewers glued to their screens. To most fans, it would be a stretch to imagine that these events take place in the same universe as the film Brave, since the latter is set in Scotland in the Dark Ages, as opposed to the obviously modern Monsters, Inc. But one theory has indeed managed to place these films in the same realm, as it's been posited that the doors used by the monsters to gain entry into the children's bedrooms are actually portals that allow anyone to travel through time. The theory states that the doors allow the monsters to travel back in time, so that they can harvest the screams of children, not only in the present, but also in the past, giving them a seemingly endless supply of energy, which they can power their city with. This is where one character in the film Brave comes in. Fans suggest that after the events in Monsters, Inc., where Sully and Mike finally return Boo to her room, she misses them too much and learns how to use the doors to her advantage. She travels through time looking for her two friends, which is mirrored by the witch in Brave, as she also seems to travel through magical doors. The witch ends up turning one character, Mordu, into a bear, but according to the theory, Boo and the witch are the same person, and she only transformed him into a bear since Sully reminded her of one. The theory was further bolstered when some eagle-eyed fans noticed that the witch had a wooden carving of Sully in her cottage, but even this...
Oh my god, I think I'm gonna have to watch Monsters, Inc. and Brave now, back to back. Because what?
Hidden clue has been expanded on. It further states that all of the Easter eggs that can be found in Pixar movies are relics that have been left behind by Boo, or the witch, so that they'll be found by...
Wait, but why does that actually look like Sully? Hello? Sully's right there. Now this one got me thinking.
Sully, in hopes that he'll realize that she's trying to reunite with him and Mike. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Crazy. Alright, that was a interesting conspiracy video. Damn, that last one really has me thinking. But let me know if you guys want me to do more conspiracy videos. I actually kind of like them. So if you guys do, give me a like on the video. But that was the end of it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on. I'll see you next time. Bye.